So my name is Annie Clark, and I played tennis here, and I graduated in May 2022.
Sam Latona, wrestling, and I'm a redshirt sophomore.
I'm Charlie Burt. I was on the swim team, and I'm a senior.
My name is Mary Griffin. I am a junior on the women's lacrosse team here at Virginia Tech.
So hi, I'm Emma Inch. I am on the swim and dive team here. This is my second year at Tech.
So I think when it comes to being a student athlete, a lot of people struggle, especially with the transition from high school to college. It's a different world. I mean, when you're playing lacrosse or playing your sport, that's really different, but also just being away from home, being away from your friends and family, and just being surrounded by so much change. It's really hard. The first sense of emotion that I felt from it was a lack of control. So during this phase of my freshman year, I turned to food, and that started with unhealthy habits such as bulimia and restrictive eating.
So I was in a really abusive relationship, mentally, physically, and emotionally, my sophomore year. And so after we broke up, I was like, I want to be the best version of myself. And to me at that moment, I thought I needed to be skinnier. I would eat dinner and then I would throw it up. I thought that would help me. In reality, it did not help me at all, but I restricted a lot.
Wrestling, I think that's probably why it makes it like one of the toughest sports, is because you have to manage your weight and then go out, compete, and feel good. And I probably didn't really cut too much weight in high school, but when I got to college, it was kind of a real thing. And so, I mean, I was as big as, 145 pounds in the off season, cutting down to 125. At the end of the year last year, I remember I had a meeting with my head coach, and he was like, whether you know it or not, like it did have an impact on you. The weight cut did have an impact.
So I was a senior in high school. I had a triggering moment actually from a coach who made a comment to me and just kind of started those bulimic behaviors. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get help before coming into college, so those behaviors just kind of exponentially got worse as I started dealing with the stress of college and college athletics.
The time when we were all sent home from college, I was a freshman at this point. This was the first time since I was like 10 years old that I haven't been able to consistently be in the pool. I started to notice things were changing. I wasn't as toned as I was during the middle of the season, but I found that food was one of the only areas I could manipulate and control in my life during that time.
I would spend 2.5 hours in the grocery store looking at calorie count, sugar. Like specifically, I was in Kroger one day and I had a jar of peanut butter, and peanut butter used to be my favorite food. I used to put that on everything. And I picked it up at least 5 times, put it back down, walked around with it, went to another aisle, and then eventually I put it back, and I walked out of the store without it in my hand, and that voice was right next to me the entire time. When I go to bed, like I would be laying in bed and all I could think about was what I ate. That voice in my head telling me, like, you need to go throw that up. Like, you need to get rid of it, or you don't deserve to eat tomorrow.
I'd say like the scale, like, okay, what do I weigh right now? And if I eat this, how much will I weigh? And so it does suck. Like, it's going through your head like all the time. You're like, I don't want to think about this all the time. I don't want to have to think about what I can and can't eat. So that sucks. Like, it's just like always kind of, it's not like there, but it's almost like in the back of your mind. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, it's always just like in the back of your mind, like, okay, like how much do I weigh? How much do I weigh? If I get on the scale, how much do I weigh? Am I too much over? And when you do that, like, you can't focus on your sport, like you can't focus on winning.
It was really hard because you're also in a dorm room, so you kind of want to keep it secret. I think that's something a lot of people forget about when it comes to eating disorders, is a lot of people were like, I had no idea you were going through that. And then I was like, that's exactly it. Like, I don't want you to know. I want this to be hidden. I'm not proud of it. I'm ashamed of it. Because I was so restrictive during the day and maybe not letting myself eat as much as I wanted to. Then by the time night came, I was eating a lot more and kind of uncontrollably eating, and I felt so much guilt from that I ended up purging, and that's kind of like the cycle that I was going through.
It's definitely hard to think. I've been fighting those voices been in recovery for 2 years now, but the biggest part for me was the mental aspect and the fact that I could not be on a court for more than 5 minutes without falling apart. It was just like a really challenging time. Like, as athletes, like, you're told, like, you can't show your pain, like, you need to push through, and that's what I did for 1.5 years at least in college. Like, I pushed through. It didn't matter like what was going on in my life. Like I would show up to practice and put on a fake face and try as hard as I could. And it's kind of like silent suffering where no one really knows what you're going through.
That kind of negative voice leading me down the anorexia path was kind of telling me just be thinner, do it for your sport, do it for your teammates, do it for your coaches. I felt like controlling my food and maintaining this voice of get thinner would help me progress in the pool.
With swimming, like you're in a swimsuit, like every bit of you is showing. I want to be as skinny as I can. I want you to be able to see my ribs. That was like my one thing. I wanted people to see my ribs. Like now I know that's so unhealthy, but back then that's all that I wanted. I mean, I just want to be happy. I just want to be like happy Charlie Bird again. Growing up, I have people know me as being the most positive person on and off the pool deck, to lift people up. And like, I want to take that and lift myself up. I just want to be happy and not worry about what other people think. I don't want to care about anything except for I just want to be happy, like genuinely happy again.
One side of you being like, I know you're better than this, like you can beat this, but then on the other side, you're like, oh my God, why did you do that? Why are you eating that? Or why can't you get this part of your life figured out? And like, we deserve this punishment. And it feels like it is a form of self-harm. Like you are punishing yourself because you're either unhappy with yourself or something in your life. And it's really hard to look at sometimes your biggest enemy is yourself, but it is a voice and it's hard to quiet that voice. And it's an active choice every single day of which voice you're gonna listen to.
My life completely fell apart. I mean, I was using binging, purging behaviors probably up to 15 times a day, to the point where, you know, if I continued that trend, it's really scary, but I probably don't know if I would have been here still.
I could barely even do my day-to-day things when I used to go to 5+ hours of practice. I think this is when I realized what I was doing was not at all helping me in the pool. It was, if anything, at this point, it was just hurting me and hurting my family. And that was another piece that was really hard, was seeing my parents and my twin sister have to beg me to eat food.
Being an athlete, having a full academic course load, having severe depression and anxiety, and also fighting an eating disorder all at the same time, it just like my world came crumbling down on top of me. I'm not fully recovered. I'm still recovering, and that's why I had to take a step back from my sport. So that was probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I came out about my eating disorder publicly last year, and that was really hard for me. But this decision was so much harder because I had been swimming since I was, 2.5 years old. When
my nutritionist sat me down and kind of laid it out on the table, if you can't get healthy, you can't play lacrosse. And I was terrified of losing lacrosse. I was terrified of losing something that brought me so much joy. And it was the first time where I realized that eating disorders can impact you in so many more ways, and should be treated as equally, maybe even more so than just an injury. If you had a sprained ankle, you would take time off.
I'm not cutting as much weight this year. I'm going 133. My coaches and teammates did a really good job of being supportive and helping me through the situations. There's some guys that it'll ruin the sport for them. Cutting weight will literally, they will hate wrestling because of it. There's a lot of pressure because it's okay, well, if I move up a weight class, am I gonna make the lineup? At the end of the day, you don't wanna ruin the sport just to make a certain weight.
My quality of life, before I wasn't living. Every single day it was basically just survival mode for me. It was okay, I'd get up and just try to get to class, try to get through practice, try to get through meals, and not let anyone know what I was doing before or after meals. And so, honestly speaking, that was not living. I was just, scratching the bare bottom of what life was.
You see life from a very ugly perspective and lens. You are not able to see life in beautiful color and see the little things in life because you are focused on your issue at hand, and that's all you can think about on your day-to-day is food. Being able to just talk to someone, it just can relieve this burden. Asking for help, if it's one person or a team of help or a whole family of help, that is the biggest thing, and I'm also here to help.
First, I would give myself a hug. I think that's probably like just sometimes when you're in the thinking about your younger self, you're just like, wow, like I was exhausted. Like there was a lot I was going through, and like I just wish I had someone to just be like, oh, it's okay. And I did have those people, but like just to hear it and be reassured that everything will be okay. And maybe you don't feel it right away and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel now, but in 2 years, in a year, in a month, like who knows how you're gonna feel and who knows where you're gonna be at with the process of healing. You gotta feel every emotion possible. You don't wanna suppress them. You don't wanna put on a brave face. Be vulnerable, be authentic, because those are the first steps to the change that you wanna see.